In this video, we're looking to show how Ryan MTD Bridge communicates with HMRC. In order to use any of the APIs, Ryan MTD Bridge needs to be authorized. That's a process that's achieved from within the application. To do this, you'll need a government gateway user ID and password, which are entered in the relevant fields, and then you simply click the Authorize button. At this point, the spreadsheet will call HMRC's service and it will log you in. You'll get a security warning from Excel, which you need to agree to, and a second one, and you'll see from the screen what you're granting the application access to do. At this point, it informs you that the authorization is valid for 18 months. And you'll see in the top of the screen that the authorization was granted and when it was granted. Now you'll be able to use all of the other APIs without having to reauthorize Ryan MTD Bridge to talk to HMRC. The first step in communicating with HMRC using their APIs is to have a look at the VAT obligations that are attached to your VAT registration. Having entered your gateway username and password, you then select the registration number that you're interested in, your from date and to date to refine the period that you're interested in getting results for, and then the request status. From this you can get either outstanding obligations or open obligations, fulfilled obligations, so these relate to returns that you've previously submitted via this API, or pull back everything. Once you've made your selections, simply hit the View VAT Obligations button and the API will call HMRC, and your list of returns is populated here, ready for selection and further action. To prepare a VAT return, we need to have first of all retrieved our VAT obligations via the View VAT Obligations button. Once this is done, we'll have the ability to select a VAT return period. We want to use one that relates to the open VAT return period. Next, we'll need to import data. This gives us the option during the import process to check for any unmapped tax codes. We map tax codes to the relevant VAT return boxes so that we can allocate the net and VAT amounts to the correct boxes. In this case, we didn't have any new tax codes to map. What we can then do is have a look at our return prior to submission, which will utilize the tax code mappings. We can examine the return. Once we're happy with this, and we're suitably authorized, of course, we can click the button to finalize and submit. This is the legal declaration required by HMRC, which is effectively saying you're happy to sign the VAT return. Once we do this, we're then asked whether we want to create a PDF for our files. Usually recommended to do this. And the PDF is produced for us that we can then file. It shows us the date and time of our submission. And that's as easy as submission gets. In addition to submitting VAT returns via the API, HMRC has also built two other APIs. One to let us view our VAT liabilities, and the other to let us view our VAT payments. Assuming you've authorized the application to talk to HMRC, it's simply a matter of clicking the relevant button and our liability information is returned. We also have the option to create a copy of this for our files. Which is essentially a print of that panel that you just saw. We can also view our VAT payments. And that's all there is to that. In addition to submitting VAT returns, it's also possible to view returns that you've previously submitted to HMRC using the new Making Tax Digital APIs. In this case, first of all, you need to have viewed or retrieved your VAT obligations. You then select the period that you're interested in, and then it's simply a case of clicking View to view the filed return. This will then retrieve the information sent to HMRC along with the status, which has to be true because you've signed it. Unfortunately, it doesn't return the information that was available to you upon initial submission of the return. Although, if you do need to get this information, it is available in the submission log. Sometimes not everything goes according to plan. For this reason, we've created something we call a submission log. The submission log is a record of every submission and attempted submission via the Ryan MTD bridge. This is just a list of username, date and time, the VAT registration number, the API path. This is the path that is used to communicate with HMRC, and then we show the data that is being sent to HMRC and the response received from HMRC. This is in the format called JSON that's been required by HMRC to have its data sent, and it's the format that HMRC will return data to you. If you strike an error when you're trying to submit a return, you'll see in the submission log what has gone wrong. This isn't always the easiest thing to read, therefore it's possible to copy this, and we've created a link to a freely available JSON viewer. You can then paste that text and it's a little easier to read. So in this case, a duplicate submission was attempted. This sort of error log can help if you do have problems and need to communicate with HMRC. You can provide them with the details of what you attempted to send, where you attempted to send it, what you got back, and also, because of the date and time, when you attempted to send it. In order for the tax code mappings to take place to have a look at returns, we need to configure the solution to recognize the data. This is built into 3 sections, the first being a list of our entities and our VAT registration numbers. Next, we're aligning our columns with our data. This is usually best achieved by having imported data previously so we can see which column we can find our information in. So our entity information is in column A, our tax code in column F, etc. The tax code mapping is achieved by entering the tax code. A lookup appears to grab the description if that's present in your data. You'll specify whether it's an input or an output code. Select the box for the tax and select the box for the net. For any codes that require multiple mappings, for example, our intra-community code, we need tax to go to box 4, net to go to box 7, and we also need a value to go into box 9. Once the configuration is set up, if the data is the same, it can be imported at any time and mapped to the relevant return.